The next panel we have in the Lumetri color panel is curves. So let me just close down creative and turn off the effects that we added for both creative and basic correction, and then go down to curves so that you can really see what this is doing. The RGB curves will add or decrease, well, exposure or even contrast to your footage. Clicking in this graph and dragging down will decrease the exposure or increase the exposure if you move up. We can add contrast by creating a little S curve. The bottom or the left side of this graph affects the darks. So if I drag down, that's decreasing the exposure of the darks and the blacks. And then over on the right side, we have the highlights. So if I click and drag up the highlights, it's actually making it more exposed. So having a S curve like this adds more contrast. And you can see over here in the Lumetri Scopes panel how it looks. There's more colors. The highlights are higher and the darks are darker. We can go into specific colors and say we want to add a little bit more warmth to it. We can choose the red graph and just click and add a little bit more red to this. Now, you don't want to go too crazy unless you want this to be more stylistic, because as you drag up, it starts to get a little bit wonky. And you can do the same thing with the greens and the blues. And to undo any of this, you can just double click. Next, we have the Hue Saturation Curve down here. And this affects just a specific color in your frame or a group of colors. Let me actually reset this S curve and turn back our basic corrections on so we can see what the Hue Saturation Curve does. We can select a specific color by clicking down here. Say we select the blues, and then we can adjust just the saturation of that blue by increasing or decreasing. Now this is a range, so we can add or increase the range that's selected by increasing the size of this range like so, and then we can add points like so. So now this is selecting all the blues and desaturating it. Maybe we want to desaturate everything except for the blues. We can actually increase the saturation of the blues like so, and then take the rest of the colors and move them down inwards. Clicking and dragging in will desaturation, and going outwards in the circle will add saturation to it. If we want just the blues and just the yellows, we can do that. We can get creative with this. So just the yellows, just his face. So this means everything except for the pinks and the magentas and the greens is going to be saturated, almost too saturated. So that's how you use the Hue Saturation Curve to get creative. You can imagine a shot of a red rose in a green field of flowers. Maybe you want just that red rose to be saturated, everything else to be desaturated. This is one of the tools that you can use to get that sort of effect. You can also do that with this HSL secondary panel, and we'll be learning that in a couple of videos. So this is the curves panel. It's another way to add contrast, add saturation to specific colors, or even with this main white graph right here to the entire clip itself. Thanks for watching, and in the next video, we'll be going over color wheels.